Hello, creatives, community, and kind folks out there. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I'm your host, DBJ. Unfortunately, today, I do not have a co-host today. We will probably have to reschedule that. So, for those who are looking for the open interview discussion for the Creators Conclave today on Sunday this morning, my time. Unfortunately, that individual was unable to make it, but I didn't want to leave all of those who wanted to tune in for this particular broadcast to be left with nothing. So you have, all you have is my smiling face. So I apologize for that. Now, I will say that I did not have anything particularly planned for today. So I thought that I would share with you a I always have a side project. There's always some kind of creative imperative in my head about what to do and when to do it. Uh, many of us either suffer from like a creator's block. We don't have any ideas, or an overabundance of ideas and the inability to get them out. So it was a slight bit of a challenge. And mind you, this was all in fun over at one of the Facebook groups that I am part of. There's a Facebook group called Absolute Tabletop Official Group, and that particular Facebook group has a lot of members. They're extremely positive. They're all creative. Uh, it's just an amazing place. And the challenge was, mind you, I took it as a challenge. Nobody else did. The challenge was a what if challenge, and you guys know just as well as I do that before and after we sit down for tabletop role playing games, we're online, we're on our various social medias and such. That we are the type to talk about like the what if scenarios. It's the excuse me. It is the scenario where, what if dragons took over the world? What if technology became abundant? And much of science fiction and fantasy is very speculative, especially science fiction. What if a zombie apocalypse spread around the world? What if the same thing, a virus or something spread around the world? What if all of technology one day was just canceled? How would people survive? And so that speculation, what if we met aliens? What if those aliens were hostile? What if they were kind? What if cyber technology became ubiquitous in the future and everyone had access to it, as if you could go to the local mall and get yourself a new cyber optic or something? All these are speculative. So I thought it would take up that challenge, and the specificity of the challenge was taking tropes we have in our classic Dungeons and Dragons and then extrapolating them out. Extrapolating them out to the point where, in many ways, they're a little bit ridiculous, and I like the ridiculousness of it. Now, mind you, all these extrapolations are based on a particular premise, meaning, like, for example, let's take the zombie apocalypse idea again, right? We know zombies don't exist, and apocalypse hasn't happened, and a virus that somehow animates people to continue walking and all that kind of stuff. We've seen many shows where real scientists make comparisons of said situation and then refer to the real science behind it, but then debunk the fantasy version that we see in pop culture. And yes, destructive creativity is easy. It's very easy to say something wouldn't exist, something wouldn't come about. Destructive creativity is basically being a negative nanny to yourself and others. But if you allow yourself to relax a little bit and go, okay, let's presume that this particular situation will happen, whatever that situation may be. All technology around the world suddenly stops. And then many people would say, well, it would be pretty simple. We would just reboot everything and get everything started, all the factories and power plants and things like that. But they made a television show where that wasn't a possibility. And so you take that and run with that possibility. So I'm going to share with you guys um, some of the posts that I've had and just read them out to you in somewhat verbatim concerning what they are. Now, some of the classic tropes that I decided to tackle in the various editions of Dungeons and Dragons are all the very low, the lowest of lowest levels of capabilities in the current edition. So, for example, I put out a post for the floating disc spell. Yeah, remember Tensor? Remember the Tensor's floating disc? Yeah, the named spells at that time, Tensor and Mordenkainen or Mordenkainen, and so many others during the various editions of Dungeons and Dragons. I did one on Blink Dogs, the Guidance spell, the Message spell, and the Light spell. So let's go into one of the first ones I did, the Light spell, and see what it was that I wrote, and then maybe some of the comments thereof. So it starts out with the title, "What if the light spell shaped the world?" The light spell is ubiquitous, as common as a 10-foot pole in the gaming community. But what changes to a society if the light spell becomes rather easy to encounter? Here are a few of my ideas. Please drop a few of your own ideas below. And of course, mind you, this was a post that I did over on the Absolute Tabletop official group. Please check out AbTab. They have a convention coming up in June. They are made up, AbTab is made up of 4 individuals, Tabletop Terrors, How to Be a Better Game Master, and A Fistful of Dice. And those 4 individuals together make up Absolute Tabletop. So they put out quite a bit of content, so check them out. Anyway, I wrote College of Light. Those above average intelligence leave the rural areas to learn the arcane art of generating light. This becomes a lucrative way to earn a living as they either alight specific locations around town or as interior lights, or they are silent guides and hold up lights for the wealthy and privileged. This creates brain drain as tending fields and learning grunt work falls away to a desire to join the the bright lighter school. The coin isn't bad either. Not a bad way to earn a living, but leaves many family enterprises vacant as young ones leave home. Rival glow. The color of the light and the item enchanted, again, at a cost rather than a common item, is a brand identity. The red light district is truly bathed in red light. 24 hours of work. With enough money and casters, work continues for 24 hours, boosting the output of the city-state. This also inadvertently disrupts the sleep cycles of those forced to work 16-plus hour days under the watchful eyes of taskmasters and sleepy bright-lighters. This isn't all bad. Many can read overnight, get vital work done, and tend to the injured or sick at all hours of the day or night. No more fear. As light arrives, so too does the fear of darkness retreat. The city-state can be seen from miles away, globes of light making the city glow from within. This has the side effect of making these city dwellers leave all common sense behind when out in the wild. All right, seeking darkness. An underground springs up for those who want to get away from the light. It is considered taboo or impolite or plain uncivilized to desire a dark, private place for oneself. Quote, "What are you up to that requires it to be hidden from view or in shadow?" Nonetheless, many hide their desire to just get away from the overlapping globes of light so pervasive in this city. Torture by light. Criminals are punished by continuous light, a cell bathed in light, or a mask, or a helm, or cloth that covers the face. The light prevents them from getting sleep and throws off the sleep cycle in dangerously harmful ways. The mind and body begin to fail. Army of light. During battles, long travel, or just as a message to foreign powers, a cadre of bright lighters follows along, a long serpent light cast by dozens of casters, lights arrowheads or throws glowing stones into dark corners. The light is a message of power, a signal to others that darkness falls away, and so will you. New predators. While the light drives away many predators, new ones are drawn to the light. Insects gather around the orbs of light, especially in tropical and wetland regions. This draws ever larger insects and animals that feed on those swarms. Bats, sturges, and others begin gathering in clouds over the city. Arcane stains. With an abundance of this magic, so too does it bleed over to other people, places, and things. Some items naturally glow from within. Locations have a natural light from the walls, ceiling, and doors. The people are now infected. Some have shadows made of pure light instead of shadows and made of pure light. Instead of shadows and shadow demons, they are made of light. The radiance is enough to overwhelm mere mortals. So, of course, I wanted to say, what do you think? What changes do you imagine in a city, large city gifted with light? And of course, I have links and things like that in the description of the spell. The spell is a cantrip, takes one action, is a verbal material component, lasts 1 hour, is an evocation, and requires a dex save, especially if used against someone unwittingly. It says, you touch one object that is no larger than 10 feet in any dimension. Until the spell ends, the object sheds bright light in a 20-foot radius and dim light for an additional 20 feet. The light can be colored as you like. Completely covering the object with something opaque blocks the light. The spell ends if you cast it again or dismiss it as an action. That's pretty important right there. If you target an object held or worn by a hostile creature, that creature must succeed on a dexterity saving throw to avoid the spell. So, again, that was just one idea that I had. Absolutely, just it's basically like a thought experiment, that kind of thing. That's basically where I went. Now let me go into the chat. Sorry guys, I wasn't trying to ignore you, but I was attempting to not be distracted and stuff. Tesla says it was that seventh son of Edward that perfected the light spell. yeah, 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 Rickard. Yeah, it's canceled. Yeah, there's still a show. I would rather do the show. I've decided to rather do the show than cancel it completely. Yeah, yep. Thomas said it. Absolutely. Yeah, and I like how you marked out like it was the seventh son of Edward that invented. No, I mean perfected the light spell. Yep. Deadman says continual light, permanent light spell, originally level 2, but maybe higher level instead. I believe 5th edition does not have the continual light spell any longer. I think you can get I believe there's a way to get continual light in 5th edition, but not by a direct spell, if I'm not mistaken. I believe you would have to use meta magic or something else that makes a spell permanent, that makes the duration permanent, and then you just apply it to the light spell. But in 5th edition, it is a cantrip. So where I was going with the spell was the idea that how do I say this? I was heading towards the idea that a cantrip might be very easy to come by, like a cantrip would be the equivalent of going to like a trade school. I don't know how every setting, each person that thinks about this would have to say, against again negative creativity would say, well, everyone can't learn magic, and you would have to have schools large enough to teach that many people to learn magic. I get all that, and yeah, I get that. But one of the comments that we made about this particular post was someone says this is very interesting. Much of scientific advancement. Wow, I cannot talk today. This is very interesting. Much of scientific advancement came at the heel of invention of incandescent light, as people read and learned things well into the night after a full day's work. If the light spell was as ubiquitous as our typical fantasy game settings allow, I wonder how quickly the setting would evolve into sci-fi fantasy. I'd imagine enterprising mages would build an industry imbuing continual light onto building materials. Westinghouse illuminated bricks, continual Edison illuminated, incorporated, etc. Right? Which is what you guys brought up, right? You might even have it. It might be fact like industrialized, which is kind of the point, right? Um, I don't have the link, but there is a book available now about magic industrialization, and that book talks about the apocalypse of various types of magic and how it goes into a deep dark place. So anyway, that was one of my first posts, and I was like, oh, I wonder what that's about. So yeah, guys, it was pretty hilarious. I've got about 5 or 6 up so far. So yeah. Um, now Rickard says, Deadman says 5e has the spell continual flame, which I think it would be I think both are appropriate for each other. Now, um, of course, a continual flame, such like on a torch or a chalice, or was it a brazier or brazier, not brazier, not you know what I'm talking about. Um, yeah, having a continual flame, I suppose, would be similarly styled, although I'm not sure. I think the idea of carrying around the flame would make it far more dangerous and lethal in a good way, right? For defensive purposes. I mean, if you have a torch that's always lit, and you could use it to light fires and things like that, I don't think either one would be bad. And then many people, of course, learn to read and write through torchlight and flames and lanterns and things like that. So I think it would progress similarly, maybe slightly slower, because I believe, well, the light spell can be attached to small objects, and so for stones or like banners or the ends of poles and things like that, so you could really use them to throw light down into pits and into darkened corners and such, which maybe a continual flame might be a little bit more dangerous to do that kind of thing, but it would have a different effect, especially like in combat war, guardian services like being bodyguards, bounty hunting, protecting nobility. I think that too. Rickard says you might also have people get segmented sleep if you have 24/7 light. Yeah, there is a. I know you guys know this. I'm not going to search it. I've got too many windows open as it is. Um, there is an affliction that happens to people, and this happens to those who are blind, where you start to get your sleep cycles confused. And this also happens to people left in solitary confinement, where there's always light and you never see the day-night cycles. And it's something simple. It's on the tip of my tongue, but essentially it's the day-night cycle getting mixed up, and then your body starts to suffer for it. I don't know the name of it, but I could see that happening, especially with a people who have arcane power, who haven't confronted those problems with sleep cycles. Um, yeah, non-24. Yeah, non-24. There's a medication that's on commercials today that talks about getting your sleep cycles back, and I believe one of the commercials in one of the gentlemen in the commercial is blind and has a service dog, and talks about, is your sleep cycle off? Are you out of line with those around you that have a particular sleep cycle? Now Rick defines segmented sleep. Like, sleep is 4 hours sleep, 3 to 4 hours wakefulness, 4 hours of sleep. And I believe ancient societies had that quite often, where you would have wakefulness and then sleep, and the wakefulness and sleep, even during the evening hours. That we didn't have the 8 hours of restful sleep that people should get wasn't a norm. It was an oddity, much like how you often see uh, like the classic here in the States, you see the classic cowboy with his feet up and his hat over his face taking a nap on his porch because he already woke up at like 4 o'clock in the morning to get work done and then is there to take a 2 to 3 hour nap and then wake up after that to get some more work done for the afternoon and evening, especially in um, very hot climates. You wouldn't want to work under the when the sun is at its highest point. Now, Rickard says there are some studies that suggest that humans' normal sleep patterns would be like that, with or without artificial light. Yeah, yeah. I think there's some studies that say that we should nap in the middle of our day. Um, and there are some businesses. I think Google and some of the tech companies, despite the fact that they like to work their people hella hard, actually bring up the fact that go take a nap in our sleep pods or something like that. Yeah, Deadman says like cats. Yep, yep. There, as a matter of fact, there's a lot of um, predatory animals tend to tend to be that way, where they have short bursts of great power and then longer periods of restfulness, almost as if they are either like um, they don't want to burn all of their energy because they know they need to burn their energy to be a predator. So they're a lot like cheetahs are very much like that. The prototypical um, burst of energy, long period of rest, burst of energy, long period of rest. So yeah, Rickard says the 8 hour cycle is suggested to be artificially induced due to light being on so much. And society's kind of done that to us as well, right? Like we 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 don't operate in a method where it's like, oh, you're only going to work 4 hours and then leave for a couple hours and come back to work for another 4 hours. It's like you're going to work 8 hours or whatever period of time, right? You come to work, you're going to stay there and work, and then you get to leave. So I think we kind of did that to ourselves. So um, I'm not being squirrely, but I'm going to read out the other what if. Although I guess I could take this and make it its own segment though. But whatever. I maybe not. I'm going to share it with you guys anyway. I don't I don't care. All right. So the next one I did was the message spell. It wasn't the next one, but it is a next one, and it was the message spell. All right. So um, for those who don't know, I'm just going to read what I wrote. And you make a judgment on it. All right. What if the message spell shaped the world? A pointed finger, a loop of copper wire, a message unheard. Let's deep dive into how this spell could impact society if it somehow becomes the catalyst change. Secret societies. Of course, this spell is used to organize a faction behind the scenes. Blackmail, gossip, plans, threats, promises, and more are passed under the noses of those in power. The authorities, what little they can do, are playing whack-a-mole, trying to stamp out a forest fire with their boots. For example, organized crime. Quote, keep your eyes forward, keep smiling, and place the coin on the counter, or we burn your shop to the ground. Religious figures. Quote, do not fear, for I am the air, the wind, and the storm. Do as I say and rejoice. For merchants, quote, I have fish for half the price at my stall. Just ignore the yelling and hear my voice. I have the fish for the right price. A need for the finger. It would behoove those in power to remove any and all who have the arcane skill to send any message. This is not the case. Arrogance is a trait best left behind. Nobles and rich merchants have many of these messengers on the payroll. They are used to pass bribes, conspire behind the backs of each other, and send commands to assassins and soldiers. Puppets in power. Nobility, blood rights, divine lordship, and other self-appointed leadership quickly crumbles. Once the populace finds the cracks in those above, it becomes easy to spread rumors, discount tales of greatness, and make fun of those above. Quiet city. Packed crowds say very little. Most just don't want to have their words taken out of context. The few who can send messages sub-vocalize. How strange that no one speaks for hours at a time, even shoulder to shoulder. Fantasy social media. Gossip is now an economy. Popularity is power. When a rumor starts, the people talk. Some are mimetic masters. No matter how untrue or ridiculous the tale, it spreads like a virus from ear to ear from those skilled in messaging. They are the new king and queen makers. A sly word spoken in secret could spread, raising the appeal of an unknown to one in the proverbial spotlight. Broken fingers. Rich with money and promises, the messengers very easily fall victim to their own hubris. Some who take social manipulation too far are kicked to the curb. Victims whose reputations are ruined await for the chance to step on those copper-adorned a-holes spreading false information. Neo-journalism. Not everyone is into this business for profit. A subsection wants the population to know the truth about anything, anyone, anywhere. A new profession springs forth. They are out to uncover secrets and pass that knowledge on, ear to ear, passed in secret, to let the world, or a simple farmer, learn the truth about a cover-up, hidden haven, or stashed treasure hoard. Penny change. Copper mines are shut down, sealed, buried along with the skilled laborers. Copper adornment easily marks a target for good, like an influencer, or for bad, like a loudmouth liar. The authorities may search travelers or ransack homes looking for twists of copper wire to stop the spread of unfiltered information. Openness changes nothing. Secrets are laid bare, lies told to the public. No matter. Now the new regime is all about opening up, offering too much information. Criminals are openly vile and violent. Nobles are openly corrupt and monstrous. The populace just watches from the sidelines. The imagination is nothing compared to the real thing. Visitors are taken aback from the desire to openly express even the most minor detail of one's life to all those around themselves. So then I go on to, that was the end of it. Basically say, what do you think? What changes do you see in the society? How do you think the message spell would change the world? Or just a major city? It's spread over a large area. And of course, the message spell is a cantrip, casting time of one action, a range of 120 feet. It has verbal, somatic, and material components. It has a duration of just one round, and it's a school of transformation. Of course, there is no attack, save, or damage or effect. And of course, the material component is a short piece of copper wire. The detail is you point your finger toward a creature within range and whisper a message. The target, and only the target, hears the message and can reply in a whisper that only you can hear. That part is pretty important too. You can cast a spell through solid objects if you are familiar with the target and know it is beyond the barrier. Magical silence, 1 foot of stone, 1 inch of common metal, a thin sheet of lead, or 3 feet of wood blocks the spell. The spell doesn't have to follow a straight line, and can travel freely around corners or through openings. So yeah, that was and I got some comments on that one as well. But yeah, let me get back into the chat. Sorry guys, because I have this open and I did it on a search for Facebook, so it blocks out the chat and stuff. So let me get back into the chat here. Hey kitty. Yeah, that man puts in a link to Roll 20 about the D&D 5e message spell. Yep. Ricker says message, short range instant messaging. Heck yeah, if you could. Now, the way I worded it, right, it kind of sounds like just about everybody's got it, which, you might have to go to someone to do this for you to send a message, which means that if it's something hyper secretive, they either need to have a good reputation for not spreading rumors, or they already work for you, or or loyal to your regime, or you would have to have that kind of idea, right? But someone wrote in the chat, sorry, not to chat, in the Facebook message, said, I can see people of importance getting bombarded with messages. They might disguise themselves in public or even push for laws or magical protections for high society from being overwhelmed. And I thought that was pretty funny, right? Like, it made me think of political lobbyists today. So I wrote in response, like, arcane lobbyists, quote, pay me and I have the ear of the viceroy. I could see nobles fleeing from public events due to too many voices. Noble attendees could point out the loyalists to begin chants or songs on cue during public speeches, or start riots or set fires or yell things to co-sign a bold statement, right? So like a king or a queen or some noble or rich person or whatever trying to impassion the crowd could have, much like some people claim those who do magic or comedians have people in the crowd to get them riled up, to start clapping, to get everybody to start clapping, or to yell something out in the crowd that's on, on time or something. And that could be a thing, especially if the noble has trained individuals on either side of the stage and start pointing into the crowd like, now you say this, now you say that. But yeah, it could go the opposite where everyone's just like, hell no, shut up, shut the up, get out of my ears, they're driving them insane, which goes to show that you might have to have architectural changes. Yeah. Yeah, Rickard says, yeah, everyone has it in our world, only better. Like, I can send an encrypted message to anyone, anywhere in the world. 120 feet? Right? Yeah, exactly. And look how annoying it could be, too. How many different, social media threads have we seen where we just start rolling our eyes like, oh my goodness, the flame wars and stuff. But could you imagine? Now, this would be all audio spoken from one person to another. And mind you, remember the detail in the spell is if you say something to someone, they can respond back. So hopefully they're not an enemy of yours, because if they recognize your voice, they're going to know who did it. Someone else in that responded to what I posted said, like, ooh, so much like our life today. Yeah. And I said, with the limitations on the spell, I'm sure room design and architecture would change. As a matter of fact, walking into a room set up to resist messages gives a clear indication of the owner's mindset, for or against this arcane intrusion or communication, right? So someone could have a room in which, what does it say on the spell? 1 foot of stone, 1 inch of common metal, a thin sheet of lead. So let's take 1 inch of common metal, right? That's pretty damn thick. But you could have a room where you lower down barriers that, block the doors and windows and things. A thin sheet of lead probably would be better, like lead-lined windows. Or to say 3 feet of wood block. 3 feet of wood blocks the spell. That might even be easier. 3 feet's pretty thick, but you could get a room blocked with 3 feet of wood. So yeah, if you speaking to assassins or rebels or something. That's just like literal flame wars. Like, what did you say to me? Secret flame like bursts out of the sky and leaps down and burns someone random in the street, and they're like, shouldn't have said anything. That's what you get for starting a flame war. Oh well. It's like damn Luddites. Also, audio only? You mean like a cell phone? Yeah, remember those things where you used to like type in numbers and then you would hear like a ring or some kind of beep or something, and someone else would say something to you on the other end? Yeah. Back in my day, we had to dial a phone. You young folks, you don't even know what dialing a phone means. We had to start from the beginning if we messed up. Oh shit. All right. Let's move on, because this will go on forever. And by the way, I will change the metadata, so this won't be this. I guess it could be a creator's conclave video. I don't know. I'll take Rollstat off of it, but all right. So I did one. I posted one on the guidance spell. The guidance spell, and I'll give you details on the end of the spell if you're like, oh yeah, guidance. All right. What if the guidance spell shaped the world? There's nothing better than a helping hand, reaching out to help others, the embrace of a friend or family that supports your endeavors. Or is there a darkness in this light? Let's explore the ramifications of a world shaped by guidance. Prosperity. Druidic and clerical organizations send forth the devout. With but a touch and a few helpful words of encouragement, nearly everyone feels a marked enhancement. Skilled labor produces greater expertise. Even those with limited experience stumble upon excellence. Entertainment, investigators of crimes, crafts, financial dealings, early educators, and much more improve simply by the presence of those offering guidance. A new dawn. A dramatic shift. Not every acolyte is perfect. Some become distracted, not concentrating on the now. I capitalize concentrating. Others walk away from endeavors they have no interest in, only lending a hand to the activities they deem worthy. Those at the top begin sending help to projects they want or need. Coin begins exchanging hands. Favors, bribes, and threats build. Darkness falls. The circle or church now has enforcers, backed by guidance to see a task fulfilled. Everyone knows those robed figures behind these thugs means they are enabled and highly intimidating and persuasive in their mission. A black cloud. Laziness takes hold. Why study when the guiding hands can step in and lend their choice words to fulfill a project, birth a child, or travel in safety? Power has now shifted to those who guide. They become unto organized crime. Now you get no help whatsoever unless you bring gifts, coin, or promises of service. Becoming a guiding hand is a sign of status. The young flock to the circles or churches, no longer needed to do hard labor, suffer in the wild, or barely scrape by. Once a hand of guidance, always a needed hand. The revolt. Others band together to stop these overlords. The rebels have a hard time fighting. The hit-and-run tactics are not working. Those loyal to the circle or church are more athletic, have the initiative, are far more intimidating, have a greater insight finding those who would dare speak against the ruling class, and are even armed with pets and mounts and labor animals due to the excellent animal handling skill. I didn't even put that word in there. Assassination of these guiding hands becomes the norm. Poison, blackmail, kidnapping, and more are used to take them out first. This begins to backfire. Staying in power. Arms and armor are constructed from the best ore, discovered and forged under the helping hands of those that guide. The city defenses and patrols are efficient and lucky, moving in formations in which perception and investigation are enhanced. Multiple layers of guiding hands overlap, granting each other help in cases of sabotage. Multiple layers of guiding hands overlap, granting each other help in cases of sabotage, backstabbing, and sniper attacks. Even the mere presence of all these guiding hands means they are listening, watching, and standing around private conversations. They are public arms of those above, reporting on any events that would threaten the ruling class. The downfall. Too many resources are now being spent just to stop the continued attacks. The population, no longer loyal, now just does the bare minimum of effort to get the job done. No one works on their own, but must be supervised to complete the task. Nearly half the population needs to be a guiding hand to influence the rest to get to work. This cannot and will not last. So I say, how do you see the end coming? Do you see a different path? What things are missing in this historical entry? What events took place that will alter this world? And of course, the details are guidance is a cantrip level spell. It takes one action. It has a range of touch, which is pretty important. The components are verbal and somatic. The duration is concentration of up to 1 minute. So the concentration part is pretty important as well. School of Divination, and of course there's no damage or effects or attacks or saves for the spell. And it says you touch one willing creature. Once before the spell ends, the target can roll a d4 and add the number rolled to one ability check of its choice. And from what I understand, an ability check essentially is a skill check. It's you rolling your ability and then anything that adds to it. Goes on to say it can roll the die before or after making the ability check. the spell then ends. And of course, because it's a cantrip, let me get back to the chat here, chat windows. So because it's a cantrip, once it ends, it could then be used again and again. Again, of course, by touch and that kind of thing. And the guidance spell ends because it's through concentration. So the individual doing it could cancel it if the person attempting to get ready to use it may use it for something that the person doesn't want. So that was kind of where I went with it. Now Rickard says, a counter argument or addendum to the laziness point says experts in a field get targeted by the guidance guilds as they are viewed by the guild to challenge the guild. Yeah. um, Definitely a brain drain idea on that, right? Like if you're an expert, you're actually taking away, like let's say let's pick something, an architect. So an architect who knows how to build defenses, maybe design cities, secret doors, and all those kind of things, right? And it is like um, a dataless type of individual who designs the maze for the Minotaur to be trapped in, right? And these guilds that create guidance are like, you're taking away our cash, dude. Like we might have to take you out. Yeah, yep. Because the person who's skilled is actually far more, their skill ability is always on, right? It's reliable. It's like a person who's a medical doctor or a stunt driver or a teacher or a cook or something. If you learn the skill, you always have it. But if you're under the guidance, you may not have the ability to achieve the level of ability you want unless these individuals are behind you helping you out. Rickard goes on to say, so quality of arms, armor, magics, etc. go down as experts are viewed as rebels. See, and that's kind of where I was going, that you would also get this, like, the brain drain of it would start to decrease because you could very easily make people better than they are without waiting for them to learn the thing that you need them to learn, right? Like, we need arms and armor made. We could either wait 6 years for a person to learn how to make arms and armor expertly, or we could take 5 individuals who are just mediocre at it, have someone, a guiding hand, step behind them and help them to craft better arms and armor. The problem with that is they're only making up for the lack of skill. So I don't think you'll ever get anyone absolutely great, but you'll get them with the guiding hand people. I think you'll get them to be at least adequate, if not a little bit above average, because it is a D4, right? So if you translate an average skill of plus nothing, and then you get a +1 through a random +1 through +4, they are 5 to 20% better than they normally would see themselves at. So, but I don't think you would get much higher than that, because yes, an expert who has a +4 skill with a guiding person can get up to +8, which makes them 40% better. But the expert would have to agree to it. The expert could just be like, I'm leaving this place. I don't have to be threatened by you guys and talked down to by you guys. I'm good at this. You're just doing this by sheer luck, or I don't know how it would look. It is divination, so it is. You could make the case that it is putting together random ideas that happen to work out for the best. So people don't actually learn anything new. They just start performing actions, much like trying to figure out a Rubik's Cube and moving the pieces of the Rubik's Cube accidentally into place, or trying to put a puzzle together. And every time you pick up a piece, you're like, oh, that fits there. Oh, that one probably fits next to that one. Oh, that, I think it's more luck and seeing how things would turn out for the best, because it's a divination type thing. Now, of course, you could, me, I reskin, reflavor, reuse, whatever the hell you could do it that way. But I'm specifically turning the narrative from the spell into fodder. You know what I mean? That's really where I was going with it. So, but I think it would be kind of cool. Now, one of the comments, um, where we go, guidance spell. Okay, so one of the comments made, and I really like this comment because I didn't even think about it. Let's get to some of the comments that were made on the Facebook group. Um, yeah, I kind of took the idea from uh, the complex games apologist who talked about doing he talked about that on his channel, his YouTube channel. So I kind of took it from him. So we had a little conversation there. Um, Someone says, love it. This kind of logical increment with magic is way up my alley. One of the best things about, and here is the title of the book. It's called Magical Industrial Revolution, was how they took simple spell ideas and turned them into apocalypses. Um, this had something else, but we're talking about magical apocalypses. He says, my favorite was the idea of polymorphing rats into cows to feed everyone. A genius idea that would lead to major problems. Now, I'm not going to go above first level spells. I'm using cantrips and first because I'm intellectually thinking that the higher level spell, the less the population would have access to it. So, not saying that one or two people couldn't transform a whole society, but I'm trying to make this as easy and ubiquitous as possible. So that was where my mindset was. Here's the response. Someone says, this is a fantastic thought exercise and I love the prompt, very well written. For me, what's missing here is the inseparable, in my mind, connection between magic and intent. If we were talking about a science fiction scenario where you had gifted individuals who could, say, psychically enhance the minds and abilities of others, then I think it's quite plausible to believe the scenario would unfold as you've described. That is, if the effect of guidance was purely objective in its result. But I believe one of the things that makes magic is that intent matters, which is why I argue that the Force, with its light and dark side, is a form of space magic. But I digress. I think one of the reasons that the spell guidance fits so well belonging to clerics and druids is that both are led by a higher power. Those higher powers have distinct desires and intentions, and the power of their spells is derived by adhering to those intentions. I argued against this in a minute, but anyway, he says, so imagine if I, a cleric of Chantea, goddess of life and growth and agriculture, began casting guidance for profit and personal gain. Would Chantea approve? Certainly other gods less selflessly would see no issue with it, but I doubt my spells would continue to hold the same power if I used them so far out of line with Chantea's will. And druids, they may not answer to any specific deity, but they still draw power from their ideals about nature and what those ideals stand for. In many ways, their power is even more tied to the integrity with which they stay true to their chosen path. So, for the scenario to play out the way you describe, I think I would want to know why the gods have all turned a blind eye to corruption and why druids are able to keep their power while denying their true nature. So I responded, he gave me a little compliment. It says, keep in mind, this is just my 2 cents in response to your questions. At the end, overall, I think your piece is excellent and thought-provoking. So I responded with, the question of why would the gods allow this makes for an excellent mystery for a setting, right? The PCs and humanity really don't know why. Also, given the fact that most PCs and spell use has no impact by the gods. For example, they do heal or bless anyone they want to without the gods stepping in and stopping it. But truly, the gods could just not care. They could be away. This could be a test. They notice but take a very long time to respond. Or the rules dictate once given power, they can never take it away. Or maybe this whole situation is a fable, a cautionary tale told to the druids and clerics to never let this happen in the first place. So that was my little response to that. Yeah. And yeah. Yep. Like bards and bardic inspiration. I did a it's like 1,000-piece puzzle and do it and literally put a 1,000-piece puzzle by making just 1,000 moves. I wonder if anybody could do that. Well, bards can learn guidance, so true. And you could claim bardic inspiration kind of fits into there, but yeah, bards could have like a magical secret. And like I I I think this is a good example of like what the person how the person responded, and pretty intelligently and well thought out, was basically saying like, if this were to happen, contrary to the nature of the spell, right, given to clerics and druids primarily, um, yeah, you're saying like the magical secret class feature gives them two spells of any level of any list to add to their own, but I don't believe that's around first or second level. Remember, again, the rules are very low level, very easy to come across. Like I think that comes around shit 12th level, 15th level, something like that. It's up there. So like I think warlocks get the same thing. They have a similar class feature where they're able to learn a spell from any other class or something. And I think there's even feats that allow you to do that. But I don't I don't know how widespread that would be. So I would have to go like, I wonder. Now, I suppose those bards could teach other people, which would make sense if you have the ability in this world to teach it more like a wizard. Like, hey, I learned this thing and teach it and spread it around. So I could see that. Or you could you could claim that some form of patron is granting this to people who have no relationship to being bards or druids or clerics or something. Uh, yeah. He's like, yeah, yeah. Rickard said it's not, but what I mean is that the gods have no control over that. Yeah. They would have they would only have control over their followers. They don't have control over other people learning it on their own, right? Unless they came down and put a stop to it. And again, like I pointed out, like maybe the gods don't like what's going on, but it's going to take them a thousand a thousand years to respond, right? Maybe the gods don't even really care. They're just like, they're spreading my power. What do I care what they do with their own lives? Um, they're maybe the gods are gone. How many settings have we seen produced where one of the first mantras of that setting is the gods are dead, the gods are gone, the gods um, are absent or not responding. And if you make a cleric, you're not a cleric of a deity, but you're a cleric of like an ideal or something. Yeah, Rickard says, so you have 100% arcane class without patron or deity or other thing trying tying them down still can learn guidance. And I would make, and again, I make the argument that if we take the tropes of Dungeons and Dragons, yes, the guidance spell is controlled by divine power, but so are all the but so is every single spell that's ever been cast by any druid or cleric ever by any player character, right? And the gods don't stop them from healing. No one stops the cleric using a cure spell on their evil compatriot, their companion, right? No one stops them from casting bless over and over again on their adventuring party, despite the fact that there's a warlock in the party and there's somebody who's a tiefling who has some weird fiendish blood, or a dragonborn. Like, so what I was the thread I was pulling on was no one stops this stuff anyway. Now in your setting you could do that easily, but I was taking something and turning the volume up to 11 again. um, so yeah. I'll go through the others. I may go through them a little quicker though. I'm gonna wait for Deadman, the storyteller, to respond. I think he's got a little message that's about to pop in. But anyway, yeah, it mind you, again, this is taking something from the other side of the equation, right? Like you're saying, Rickard, like maybe they are all arcane casters that have nothing to do with the divine or something. This is just happens to be an ability that they're able to do. Um, Although I would find it rather funny. I didn't put this in into the post, but I was thinking about it. The assumption is that guidance is performed by someone who on is given to you by someone who is rather aligned with your intentions. But what if someone quite vile or evil is guiding someone who is good and just, right? Like, the spell doesn't specify that the individual is specifically saying things that help them out. They're just like giving them a touch, saying some genuflecting over whatever. They're saying some blah, 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 using some hand signal, and then they go about and they realize that they have some kind of insight. But it would really turn the tides if the alignment of the people who are guiding is at odds with the people who are receiving the guidance, right? The just and pure paladins might not want to be guided by the evil regime, but they're getting the guidance anyway, which is helping them out, which kind of like, it's like, I don't want them touching me, but on the other hand, I am doing better. Like, I don't know if it would be that black and white, but I don't know. Yeah. The Of course, again, we go back to the other idea, right? Deadman's like, so how do you get your spells? Wizard, through constant study. Cleric, through the grace of my god. Druid, through the elemental powers. And the bard, well, I just started making fun of a goblin. Yeah, bards always get the short end of the stick, don't they? It's like, how does a bard learn magic? And everyone's like, well, no. It's just they just start doing stuff. Right? Oh shit. Okay. So let's see. That was the guidance spell, light spell, guidance spell, message spell. Oh, blink dogs. Blink dogs. I gotta do blink dogs. All right. So sit back, relax. Okay. What if the blink dog shaped the world? Side note. Sorry. By the way, I used blink dogs because they are low challenge rating creatures, and I wanted to find some odd, very low challenge rating creatures and basically take them and turn the volume up. Like what if they shaped the world? Basically blink dolls, goblins, maybe some dire monsters or something. Nothing more than a CR1, but my intention was to go to the 1/8, 1/4, 1/2 CR creatures and see what would happen, how they would change things, for good or bad, or both, or all the above. All right, so here we go. What if the blink dog shaped the world? A simple act. A humanoid saves a blink dog pup, and history is rewritten. Here are a few of my ideas. Please don't hesitate to drop a few of your own below. All right. Humanity as nursemaids. The rivalry between the displaced beasts and the blink dogs has tilted against them. Blink pups are killed when the pack is forced to port away. The alpha cannot both lead and attack and stay home to protect the young. They choose to mix their pups in with mundane, semi-domesticated dogs. Humanity protects and feeds and trains and bonds with these pups. Dual defenders. The displacer beasts cause much harm, attacking humanoid settlements, but the combination of the blinks and its chosen bipeds is enough to thwart the random hit-and-run attacks. Bonded pairs. As children grow up, so too do the pups. The socialization, in many ways, both alters the blinks as well as humanity. I don't know if they'd be called blinks, but that's what I'm calling them. A parallel cultural manipulation, a quid pro quo. Lawful good enforcers. The blink dogs love stability, loyalty, and collectivism. In the beginning, when humanity showed signs of deception, violence, corruption, and antipathy, those individuals were culled from the pack. Lie or steal? Exile. Hit a child or murder an innocent? Death. This was often seen as brutal and unexpected, but empathy and body language goes a long way. The added protection of these blink dog packs outweighed the need to keep antisocial individuals in the mix. And I didn't describe I worded that very awkwardly, but the idea was that the blink dogs don't necessarily discuss their intentions, but they go about exiling or murdering. And when I say murder, because they're dogs, they're a pack of dogs, right? They really, they they're like black and white, meaning like they're either loyal, collective, hey, let's all have fun, I love you guys, or you're not part of the pack anymore and you're dead. And so, of course, the blink dogs have their own language. I'll say that. I'll read that at the end of it. They have their own language, but um, only through body language would they be able to communicate to humans like this individual is bad or wrong or a liar or deceptive or killed someone or whatever, cheating or whatever you have, right? So I could see like um, an argument happening in a family, and then the blink dog blinks in between the two people arguing and starts growling, right? Like, you two aren't supposed to be arguing. Or someone stole food from the local pantry, and the blink dog like hunts that person down, tackles them on the ground, and starts growling at them, waiting for them to run away or whatever. All right, I shouldn't digress from there. Okay, um, collectivism collectivism at its best. The blink. Wow, I am stumbling over my words so much today. It's because I'm probably dry. Collectivism at its best. The blink dogs help in hunting, tracking, making excellent guardians, and even return lost children or lead searchers to injured folks. Humanity feed and houses them, grooms the pups, gives them love and support and space on the bed. New magic? Question mark. Misty Step, Dimension Door, teleportation, and other spells become natural to these bonded pairs. When a PC is able to select the spell or effect, they almost universally do so out of tradition and instinct. Some travel many leagues to learn how these people do this without much training or thought. Some blink dogs never learn to port. Others are able to do so all the time without rest or recharge. A huge pack may even link together, porting an entire group of lupines and hunters alike. Nomadic cities. With humanity having such a bond, they adopt a pack mentality as well. While there are settled regions, many remain as hunter-gatherers out of tradition, not necessity. The long walk, capitalized, is common, with the young breaking away from the growing and established units. Using celestial tracking and marked territory, they return to tell tales of adventure and exploration. Blink rooms. Very protected areas are built without doors. Using teleportation, food, water, and clothing, and supplies are hidden in secure locations, such as blocked caves or locked and boarded basements. Children and the elderly are housed in these secure rooms when violence breaks out. A number of these places can be scattered around a marked territory. The Displacer Beast threat. No one knows when this began or why. Some think there has only ever been a single blink dog and Displacer Beast. All the others are divergent timelines and rips in space. The one thing for certain is that the Displacers are in league with other nasty monsters. While it seems they are the pets of ogres, trolls, and minotaurs, the opposite is true. The Displacers move from ally to ally, setting them on a path to murder the blink dogs and the humanoids they call family. So I say, what do you guys think? What kinds of odd discoveries come to mind? Drop your thoughts below. And the details on the blink dog: they are medium fey. They are lawful good. They happen to have, what's important here, a dex of 17, pretty cool. Intelligence of 10, which is pretty remarkable for an animal like biped. A wisdom of 13, which is pretty cool. And a charisma of 11, which is kind of weird. There's like 11? I don't know. Anyway, they, of course, have perception and stealth. Languages. Blink dogs speak blink dog and understand Sylvan but can't speak it. So they do have a language amongst themselves, and are able to communicate with each other. Let's see. They have a keen hearing and smell, and they have a bite attack. And lastly, teleport with a recharge of 4 to 6. The dog magically teleports along with any equipment it is wearing or carrying up to 40 feet to an unoccupied space. unoccupied space it can see. Before or after teleporting, the dog can make one bite attack. So I did make kind of a mistake, kind of, about teleport to places they can't see, but the idea was that there would be either through like mutation and things like that, they would have some other abilities. But before I read some of these comments, I'm going to go back into the chat and let's see. All right, all right. Now, what did I? Couple of comments. Some people really loved it. Um, I said, I suppose various breeds of blink dogs would happen over time. Shepherds, trackers, sniffers, dog sleds, lap dogs, uh, beautiful ones, rat catchers, and more could come about. With such lawful spirits, they would be honored to serve in their born capacity. I also said I could see them having specialized skills as well. Insight and or increased wisdom helps as a service dog. Increased speed and blink distance is a bonus for a messenger. Even a loud bay could be heard for miles, sending a code all others will understand and respond to, even if the humans don't completely get what is going on. And yeah, Tim Kearney says absolutely amazing, the sheer brilliance, detail. I think this is my favorite piece, the blink rooms. Such a cool concept. Oh, that's it. Okay, that's for that one. All right, and the very last one. I'm gonna go into this one before we get out of here. The very last one was called about the floating disc spell. Okay, here we go. What if the floating disc spell shaped the world? Floating disc, or Tensor's floating disc, is an efficient utility spell. It is a flat disc that can carry a heavy load and follows the caster. It is a force multiplier for hard labor. So how can this simple spell alter society if it becomes very common? All right, industrialization. With a new guild of disc makers, labor can now focus on other activities. Either backbreaking work becomes easier, or those same workers can now be used for other tasks. Stone, metal, bodies, cargo, and more can be carried with very little expended time, energy, and resources. Status. Nobles, the rich, those of influence, and arrogant types are always carried on a disc, along with unnecessary belongings. They ride above the common folk. They flaunt their power. That's pretty simple. That's like a given right there. Battlefield brigades. Now, you're going to have to follow me on this one because there's a lot of holes you can punch in this, so follow me here. All right, battlefield brigades. The Disc Maker Guild is all over the war efforts. They carry the injured and dead. They move heavy siege weapons, constructs, and work in tandem to quickly erect battlements. Fully armored, they walk before floating armored, air quotes, tanks. Sorry. Now armies can cross rivers, sand, rough terrain with very little effort moving walls, ballistics, catapults, and cannons. Moving the immobile. Creatures once locked in place can now be a threat, such as ropers, plants, oozes in containers, cages of the berserk, and more. New architecture. Steps are removed. In place are the disc makers who lift, carry, or move visitors to secure locations in a home or castle. Kill the disc maker? No way to get up or down or leave the place. This makes many havens secure, but also death traps. And this was a mistake that I made because I presumed that the disc could be moved without the individual themselves walking. Instead of steps, meaning vertical, I would have to say that horizontal movement would have to be a thing. Or at least, how do I say this? You could have a ledge or steps that are narrow or reserved only for the disc maker, but not for visitors, right? Like you could have a ledge around a giant pit, and then the person makes the disc, you stand on the disc, and then around the entire edge of the pit, the disc maker walks, and they might be behind like a barrier, like a railing or something, and they walk around that barrier while you stand on the disc across the lava, the acid, the spiked pit, whatever, you know what I mean? And so that could be a thing. So I really made a mistake on that one, which is fine. Someone else points that out to me, by the way. Okay, new targets. As massive machines float across the landscape and taxis carry visitors around town, the disc makers must hire trained bodyguards. Physical threats, assassinations, bribery, intimidation, recruitment, and more becomes necessary to weaken the power of those trained in this new guild. Don't target the hover tank. Put a bolt between the eyes of that heavily armored caster at the head of the floating weapon. The guild. Is this new guild neutral? Will other chapters arise in conflict with each other? Will a shadow war happen as the guilds vie for power? What status do they hold? Is it one of money and power, or servant and worker? How easy is it to teach this arcane skill? What happens to those that fail and do not earn guild rank? So I say, what are some of your ideas if this rather mundane spell shapes the world? Would others learn to make this permanent? How about enchanting items and giving them to loyal subjects, guards, or criminals? What punishment happens to those who harm a disc maker at work? And then the floating disc spell, here are the details. 1 action, 30-foot range, verbal, somatic, and material component, 1 hour duration. This spell creates a circular, horizontal plane of force, 3 feet in diameter and 1 inch thick, that floats 3 feet above the ground in any unoccupied space of your choice that you can see within range. The disc remains for the duration and can hold up to 500 pounds, which is pretty damn good. If more weight is placed on it, the spell ends and everything on the disc falls to the ground, which is a good way to disable it, I suppose. Although I did talk about using many people working in tandem to lift their 500-pound possible equivalent. And I'm sure over time, smaller ones that can only hold 100 pounds, larger ones that can hold 1,000 pounds, probably through skill and ability, natural ability and stuff would happen. Anyway, the disc is immobile while you are within 20 feet of it, which is pretty important, which is one of my mistakes that I made. If you move more than 20 feet away from it, the disc follows you so that it remains within 20 feet of you. It can move across uneven terrain, up or down stairs, slopes, and the like, but it can't cross an elevation change of 10 feet or more, which is pretty important. For example, the disc can't move across a 10-foot deep pit, nor could it leave such a pit if it was created at the bottom. So I think that little part, like it can't cross an elevation change of 10 feet or more, and it can't take someone out of a bottomless pit. I mean, a bottomless pit. It can't go across a 10-foot pit or take someone out of the bottom of it. Specifically feels like something written because of the danger of falling into a 10-foot pit, and you could be like, well, I make a tensor's floating disc and we never have to worry about pits ever again at first level, right? Also goes on to say, if you move more than 100 feet from the disc, typically because it can't move around an obstacle to follow you, the spell ends. So yeah, the spell caster needs to be close by. I'm going to read these comments, then I'll get into the chat, and then we will say goodbye to each other. I'm going to some of the comments that people that responded to what I said was, because this person told me about my mistake. It says, I really like these kind of utility spells as it has heavy implications on day-to-day living. My pet peeve is that floating disc has so many caveats that it is rather weird to me raw. Like, why is it so far away? Why can't it follow, and why can it follow but not be pushed? I rather prefer it to be somewhat autonomous, an autonomous shopping cart or wheelbarrow. You can be close, but can push it or pull it, but can't ride it yourself. Okay, I see that. And he talks about prestidigitation, you know, and talk about the cool. I was going to bring up, yes, I know thaumaturgy and prestidigitation are the go-to spells, but yeah. I put in, while none of this is game breaking, all of it is world building. I love these kinds of deep dives. A creative prestidigitator could be as valued as any artist or entertainer. A Hollywood-style location could be its own economy as people flock towards the greatest immersive experience of escapism in the world. And that was in response to, prestidigitation. It can give atmosphere like slight jazz music or a light lavender scent in a spa. It can act as a light switch anywhere where there are candles or torches. It makes non-magical cleaning products obsolete. It gives the phrase "eat it while it's hot" a new meaning because it can flavor food but only last for an hour. Graffiti can be done without leaving a permanent mark, or it can be used as a temporary billboard or advertisement. And lastly, provides ample party tricks with illusions, which I love. I love that. Uh, let's see. Someone talks about how about the mold earth spell, and I was like, yeah. Although, yeah, kind of weird. Although I said stone to flesh, burning hands, prestidigitation. Now you have yourself a barbecue and sell steaks floating down the street. Tastes incredible as long as you eat it fresh and hot. Um, yeah, as someone talks about, this is why. Someone says this is partially the reason why magic in my world has consequences. Yeah, because you could get kind of out of control. Uh, who else is it? Oh, man, someone says it doesn't replace the laborers, it just makes them more efficient. Someone still has to pile up the stuff that needs to be hauled away. It's just a magical forklift. And I said, yeah. He said, of course, but as stated above, either those ditch diggers are happy or they are put to other uses previously busy loading carts and wagons. A work multiplier for a nation others would kill for, literally. Um, Someone says too many ways to break the spell, which is first level, but for it to be amazingly useful in warfare. Setting up and retreating, maybe, but using it in battle is asking for arrow storms and magic missiles hitting you low-level casters, leaving your almost immobile, over-armored battle casters stranded. Also, and this is where he points out my mistake, also floats 3 feet off the ground and doesn't move unless the caster moves more than 20 feet away from it. Not sure how this would be useful for elevators, etc. I think the person above has it right about this being just a magical forklift or cart. Because this isn't a cantrip and only lasts an hour, really wouldn't change the setting I'm imagining. Now, my point about durations is that you would have people either overlapping each other or that individual casting it over and over again. And I said, much can be said for a single individual moving 500 pounds versus a labor animal and 2 or more workers. In war, getting food and water, supplies, and injured or dead moved would increase morale tremendously. I'm sure this wouldn't change the face of society, but I'm thinking this would give a huge bump to overall stability and positive outlooks. Unless more work is piled onto those used elsewhere. So, okay, never mind what I just said, life would still suck. And lastly, Tim Kearney gave me a compliment. He says, insanely, I'll read it. I don't like reading compliments. Anyway, but I'll read because there's part in here. It says, insanely amazing as usual. I was blown away by the variety and sheer number of ideas in this post. Rad as usual. The Battlefield Brigade's architecture and guild are the ones that most fit the game I'm planning currently. Really inventive stuff. Be sure you squirrel this away. These would make some killer what-if supplements from Critical Hit Publishing. And then I said, I'm imagining a world in which a ton of these what-if scenarios all exist at once. you know. So anyway, all right, we're done with that. So let me get back in the chat and let you guys go. Let's respond to some comments and things like that. And I'll change the metadata later. Yeah, Dead Man puts in a floating disc spell. Yeah, I like the idea of it being a shopping cart that you can push. Like the caster can't necessarily ride on it, but it doesn't stay still. It's not the idea that it only stays still unless the person moves 20 feet away from it and then it follows them behind. I'm imagining, 3 or more people around the disc that could push it across a high level, or at least get it across like swamps, sand, um, a rocky beach or something like that. But anyway, yeah, I'm taking the spell a little bit too far. And again, all these spells have like durations and things, but if you have enough people, much like Okay, much like in Dungeons and Dragons, you have multiple classes of people have healing abilities, and then they can overlap each other. The paladin, the cleric, the druid has healing, the bard has some healing. The same could be said for this kind of spell in a society where people are learning to cast it, and so the guild would be like, you're going to learn this spell. And I don't know the rules of the world, but if you have spell, if you have, if you can choose 3 spells and you have Tensor's floating disk, then you would probably have 3 slots for that spell to at least assist in pretty important things, or to alleviate the harm. Like, for example, if you supply arrows and food and armament to people on a battlefield, I could see someone having this stuff stacked on a floating disc and running behind the group. Now, as far as like the whole tanks and all that kind of stuff, I stretch that pretty damn far, right? Um, Pretty ridiculous. But again, 500 pounds is a lot of weight. I could see moving the injured. I could see even having um, the equivalent of tower shields bonded together, so you could have these defensive structures that none of the soldiers have to carry. But as they move forward, you could leave these defensive structures behind them, and then those remain in those in land taken in battle or something like that. Also, I could see carrying cages around, or hunters not having to haul food back. Uh, I mean, yes, labor animals would work well, but this is one individual, which might equal the strength of, say, two, um, strength of two or like that. So anyway, okay. Um, Guys, thank you very much.